Welcome to Bite Size, brought to you by Priestley's Gourmet Delights. Each episode will bring you ideas, news and insights into the food service industry with a bite-sized summary. I'm Xanny and I will be your host. Today's guest, Kishwar Chowdhury, is a true culinary force and a MasterChef finalist who captured hearts and taste buds across the country. You may remember her from season 13, where she made it all the way to the grand finale and placed an impressive third. But more than that, she introduced millions of Australians to the rich, bold and soulful flavours of Bengali cuisine. Since her time on MasterChef in 2021, Kishwar has continued to inspire. She is deeply passionate about sharing the beauty of Bengali cooking and how the fusion of East and West can lead to something truly magical, especially when it comes to desserts. It's an absolute privilege to have her on the podcast today. Kishwar, welcome to Bite Sized.
Thank you so much for having me, Xanny.
That's okay. So I'm really keen to understand your background and how you've ended up today on the podcast.
So I think I've ended up in this world off the back of MasterChef. That is really, it was the trampoline that sort of sprung me into this space. And that all happened during lockdown in 2020. And we were doing what a lot of people were doing. We were slowing down and shutting down and making banana bread and dalgona coffee.
Yeah.
It just, at that time, my son sort of wanted to apply for Junior MasterChef, and alongside that, like a lot of children do, he said, "Mum, come on the roller coaster with me," and I sort of just very flippantly agreed, and I ended up, on the most viewed television cooking show in the world.
That's incredible. And I love that he was 11 and he did it behind your back, is what I understand as well. So can you tell the listeners about what he did?
Yeah, so Mika, I was helping Mika make some videos to sort of audition, like the audition videos that you make for Junior MasterChef. And he was like, "Mum, you've got to do this with me." And I said yes to encourage him. But he's the one who sort of went off and filled in the forms and made, sort of put that application in. He also made a video of me. And it was so raw. I'm so surprised that the producers saw this, and I look back and I look at the video now, and I've gone back 5 years later and it popped up on my phone and I went, what was Mika thinking, but what were the producers thinking?
I think it's about authenticity.
Yeah.
So in those moments where you're not expecting anything and you're just being your authentic self.
Yeah.
That's usually when the magic happens.
Yeah, and I think my authentic self is just super daggy. So
you don't look super daggy today. And I also understand that you've had some really strong females around you that have also helped you get into this culinary world. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I was really lucky to live in a multi-generational household. So apart from mum and dad sort of coming here, my parents both came out here 50 years ago, but they met in Melbourne. They were both international students, and then they met and got married. And what they tell me is they were the only Bengalis in Australia of, I guess, single as well. So they're like, "Okay, we'll couple up." And I went, it's got to be a
we'll
bit
make
more,
it work.
I know. And I feel like they were being shy. I'm like, it's got to be a bit more romantic than that. But my grandparents lived here, and it was just really wonderful. I look at it now, and it's quite rare now to have those intergenerational households.
Yeah.
Where we saw my grandmother and mother and father all be in the kitchen, and even when my grandfather was alive, there was all those things that, aside from cooking and I guess doing what you do with the produce is one part of it because it's in your home. But even getting to that point, the produce, if there wasn't something that was in the supermarkets, my parents grew it. And my grandfather was an incredible green thumb. We still have the roses that he planted, when he was alive. We still have those roses and the trees and obviously the vegetable beds. And I look at that and I think, how wonderful is it that he sort of not only proverbially planted those seeds, but literally as well.
Yeah.
And my children get to enjoy it, I guess, third generation or fourth generation on. So it was cultivating a lot of produce that weren't available at your Coles and Woolies back in the day, throughout the 70s and 80s. And then also going fishing with my parents. Like, fishing was a big part of my life. My dad owns a farm up in Nanagoon. So that was sort of rearing cattle and understanding that cycle of life, or milling your own flour. All those things led to, I guess, cultivating really good food in our household.
You're making me hungry. I love food. And I also understand that you are third generation in a family business as well, which is printing and packaging.
Yeah.
And how much has, I guess, being in the family business, being around your family, how's that been navigating family business?
Yeah, I think family business is it's a interesting one, because it provided, just like intergenerational families, it's sort of like a lot of cooks in the kitchen, and that's always seen in a really negative way, but it's a really wonderful thing. You either stay there and you beat all the other cooks and your dish ends up on the table, or if nothing else, you're exposed to all these wonderful ideas. You see your family, in a business, and luckily our family business was thriving. So you do see a sort of like a model of success through a lot of people within your own family coming together to build something. I think what it is it's building and creating legacy.
Yeah, and I think you've done that really well post MasterChef as well in the culinary world. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
So post MasterChef, I sort of thought I was going to go straight back into printing and packaging. But it's 5 years on, and I've never really turned around and turned back into it. It's been incredible what happened on MasterChef, and then my journey afterwards. I was sort of there. MasterChef is shot here in Flemington, so you're sort of in this tin shed in Flemington, in this corner of Melbourne, and it's like this very solo journey. Like, you sort of have your blinkers on, and you're just cooking for the challenge that's in front of you, and you're just surviving each day. What it does, though, it gets projected all over the world, and that's the part that I guess you just don't see because you're going on your own solo journey. What it would end up being is something that I could never have imagined. What I was doing by myself, sort of in one corner of Melbourne, Australia, sort of touched so many people, and it impacted a lot of people. There was days where I was getting thousands and thousands of messages, emails a day, and that lasted probably for the first year, and then it went down to hundreds, and it tapered off. But even now I still get messages every day talking from different parts of the world, like South Africa, UAE, Dubai, Norway. There's all these pockets and corners of the world where people will still write and say, hey, Kishwar, I just watched your season, and this is 5 years onwards. So there's this rippling effect of what it does. And I think what it did, which I didn't realize, was it let a lot of people who are unseen, and often they're unseen or they're undervalued or really underpaid as well, who are doing what they're doing. And usually these are mothers and women in kitchens who are not really ever credited for the labor of cooking and for the labor of their lifetime of work. This is such a huge chunk of your life, and it's such an important thing to put food on the table. And I was there, and I made it to the grand finals off the back of dishes that I was really putting up and questioning, and sort of challenging the notion of what foods are considered fine dining, what foods are considered valuable.
Yeah, very interesting. And to think this all came about from your 11-year-old. So I know that you're doing a little bit of work as well with some children in the kitchen, and I know how important it is to start to get them in early. I do a lot of cooking with my little one. Tell me about how you brought your children into the culinary world, and then also what you're doing from a cooking school perspective.
Yeah, I think you and I both, we were chatting about this. This is something that's so close to both of our hearts, it's about getting children in the kitchen early. I had both Serafina and Mika sort of peeling carrots or even starting to put groceries away, and just understanding how the kitchen sort of works and getting a feel for that space. And this is a space to take ownership of. And it's not just about like the motor skills and the things that you develop and the cognitive skills you develop in the kitchen. Cooking is a life skill. So I just, I'm always flabbergasted by the fact that we leave school and we're, 18 years old, and the only sort of exposure we get to cooking is if the people who want to sort of take it up as a subject like hospitality. And it goes beyond that. You don't have to be a chef to have to learn how to cook. I just think it is such a huge, important life skill, and teaming up with a school here who's starting cooking classes. But it's more than cooking. Again, it's about how do you shop for produce? How do you, it's sort of like survival in the real world. And those,
when mummy's not around anymore to,
when
to
mummy's
do
not
the
around,
cooking.
or you're a poor student living overseas, maybe somewhere, or even here, and surviving on 2-minute noodles. What can you add to that? But also cooking and shopping on a budget. So they're all the things that I don't think we stress enough. And food is, we eat 3 times a day. There, you can live your whole life without ever, knowing how to swim or needing to swim. But we think those skills really, I guess, supersede something like how to feed yourself. And I just want more schools to put more attention to this is something that children need to learn.
Well, it really sets them up for success. I think about obesity levels and understanding food, nutrition, but I'm also a big believer that food brings people together. So it's about creating memories, because usually you're sitting around the table with your family, talking about your day and what's happened, and that's where you get those, unique connections as well.
Yeah. So there's this study that sort of says that if you have 5 meals a week, just 5 meals a week sitting together, devices off, and those meals last for about 20 minutes, which is not a very long time. These are not like the dinners and lunches we have with our friends.
Long lunches? What are those?
We're busy women. We don't have long lunches. No, but just 20 minutes a day, turning off devices, eating a meal together is enough connection to really make a huge change in your children's grades, in their, not just their social skills, but their, their regulation and things like that.
Yeah. So I know back in the day when I was growing up with my family, it was, it didn't matter what was happening. Everyone had to be home for dinner. It was 7 o'clock, the TV off, and everyone had to sit around the table and talk. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why our family's so close is because of that time. So that's fascinating.
Absolutely. Meal times sort of shape people, shape the person you're going to be.
It's really interesting. So we moved into a brand new greenfield site about 18 months ago, and we changed the rules from being able to eat at your desk to actually going downstairs. And there's a beautiful eating area. And now everyone has lunch, and it's just a beautiful way to connect with every single person in the facility. And you get to have so many good conversations because you kind of let your hair down. You're always asking what are they eating, so you're learning about their culture. It's fascinating how it brings people together.
I love that. I love sort of growing up in manufacturing as well. That lunchtime is important because a lot of your work can be quite, I'd say, solo. And not a lot of work is in these team spaces where you have to coordinate with other people to get your job done. And so that lunchtime just is such an important moment of human connection, but also attachment to your organization, attachment to your job. A little part of, after I left Melbourne, I was in London for a while, and I studied in Germany in Heidelberg. And I have to say, we visited a lot of printing factories. And sometimes there would be, upwards of 1,000 workers or 300 workers. And their canteens were incredible. Like it was
the food over there is just incredible how they do it.
I think different cultures and different countries on how they bring people together. And we were talking about, I guess, school and lunches before, but in Japan and other countries like South Korea, children are really hands-on involved in serving lunch.
Yes.
So there'll always be children who are, they have hot lunches every day.
Yeah.
And when my son was little, I lived overseas for a little while and I was setting up my printing factory over there. And my son went to the American school and no one brings lunch from home. They have canteens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they have canteens. They just have a little card and they swipe their card and it's the American school system.
Yeah.
And I love that. And so when I did come back and live in Melbourne, I struggled with the school lunch boxes.
Yeah.
And I went, it's really nice when kids go together and they eat the same thing. There's always like this amazing variety of choice, but it's nice when that's something communal as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I struggle with the daily lunchbox.
All the time.
You are listening to Bite Sized, insights for the food service industry. Brought to you by Priestley's Gourmet Delights. You've obviously travelled a lot. So tell me what's your favourite dessert?
I do love chocolate. I think anything like really dark chocolatey base is my go-to on a menu.
Yeah.
So I love a really rich gâteau.
Yeah.
Like almost like give me all the chocolate, omit all the sugar. I like to lean into savory desserts.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Tell
us about that.
So I think the best desserts or the most memorable ones always have an element of spice. So obviously salted things like the salted caramels or the salted chocolates just to heighten, the flavors. But I love desserts that have, and Indian desserts do this very, very well. One of my favorite ingredients in a dessert when I make them is pepper. So the Indian desserts can be quite on the sweet side.
Yeah.
And I guess like a little trick that's sort of come down through hundreds and hundreds of years is to add a little bit of pepper into desserts, and it creates this unbelievable balance. And I used all of these sort of insider secrets on MasterChef as well. And I make this rose vanilla pepper kulfi or ice cream.
Wow.
And
did you make any for today?
We have to go back to one of your little HQ sort of labs, and I'm happy to make it for you.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And so have you got any other insights in terms of dessert mashups, like East and West combined?
Yeah, I think that's the space that I love. I love living in. That's, I think Eastern, when I say Eastern desserts, I want to say Indian desserts. My ancestors and my family come from a very specific part of India, and we're known as Bengali. So we're sort of the third largest ethnic group in the world, but there's not a lot that's known about us. And I think that is probably, probably why what I did became quite popular on MasterChef, because there's a lot of people in that region, but there's not a lot of exposure to our food. But sweets and desserts, and we call it mishti, which is the sort of the name for sweets, is a huge part of Bengali culture. It's a huge part of Indian culture. But from the moment you're born, so from celebrating birth to I don't want to say celebrating, but commemorating death, and everything in between has a different sweet, has a different dessert, has a different sort of like, this is this particular festival, this is the naming ceremony, this is, what happens, like everything, like graduations, weddings, like the every bit of symbolism that comes through sweet. Sweet is a part of storytelling and a celebration of life. And in Bengal, that's where sugar was first created. So from date palms and sugar came what we call jaggery or gur. That technology actually, invention, sort of came from the Indus Valley, like from India and specifically from Bengal. So as you can imagine, this is something that was sort of probably about 5,000 or 6,000 BC. And then sugar became more and more refined in China and entered West Indies, and then it traveled to France. And so I guess my ancestors or my culture really like sugar is a very, very important sugar. Desserts are a really, really important part of how we tell our story and how we live our lives.
Yeah. So you learnt cooking desserts from a very young age then?
Yeah. So everyone sort of, what I feel that every auntie has their specialty.
Yeah.
And I can master something over a lifetime and just never make the perfect rasgulla or the gulab jamun. But there's always just that one person who that was their life's thing, and they just have that magic touch. It just could be the heat in your hands and how you roll it. And you just have this sort of like touch of doing it amazingly. So I feel like you have all the skill sets, and I learn and I try and perfect all the time. But there's just like people have their
I find
perfect
with desserts as well is there's such a science behind it. And once you've made it, you can't, like with savoury, you can tweak it.
Yeah.
But with a dessert, it's so scientific.
Yeah.
It's such a science. So any little tweaks to the recipe that you make might not make it the same way every single time. Yeah.
So, do you ever have that aha moment as well where you've tried something? Because I think I had that with choux pastry in my 20s, and I would try and it would just be this flop. And there was just this one point where it connected and I just fell in love with choux. Have you had that sort of aha moment where you're like, I've been trying this for a while?
I'm not as good a chef as what you are. I like making cakes, weirdly, in my own time. But we have a very talented group of new product development technicians at work that are able to develop recipes.
Yeah.
And we can go from 1 kilo to some of our biggest bowl sizes being over 400.
Wow.
So it's a real science and an art to be able to do that.
Bulk up.
And it's very different from baking at home. So what you do at home versus when you're commercializing something, very different process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but no, I'm not as talented as you. I would steer clear. I'd probably buy the choux pastry. It's not where my talent lies.
Yeah.
Let's just
but
say
even
that.
with like cakes and things like that, I think you bake a cake and then you sort of crack the code and you're like, now it tastes exactly like my aunt used to make it or my mum used to make it.
Yeah, I guess I probably didn't associate, because I've been in the business for so long. I think dessert never was one of those things that I needed to feel like I wanted to master. And I've been exposed to dessert for most of my life. So I'm kind of desensitized to it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I never really needed to or wanted to be able to bake like my mum or anything like that. I am the person in my family that we do go to for cakes. But I make just really basic ones like the tea cake.
Yeah.
Because it's just like cinnamon, sugar, butter, delicious.
Yeah.
Or a traditional sponge cake with pure cream.
Yeah. Oh, yum.
Yeah. Yeah. Cream and berries. That's what I like to go to. So I want to talk about your Diwali series next, because you mentioned in it that the Australian produce to elevate traditional Indian sweets, where you actually call it liquid gold. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so liquid gold is, I guess, a term that was used for gur or jaggery, which is, it sort of spurred international trade all those centuries ago, where people were coming to find, sugar and spices and other things, but sugar was one of those top of the list. So that's where the term liquid gold comes from. But doing this series, like shooting this series, it was sort of this project where they said, we want to sort of look at Diwali, and I got this sort of assignment from SBS, like go out and find out how people celebrate Diwali and cook some recipes. And it was such a sort of journey of discovery of how the diaspora and the community here in Australia, what they've been doing, how they eat, what they wear. And I was born here and I grew up here, and it was so different from 20 years ago and 30 years ago, where there wasn't a lot of, I guess, I want to say a lot of businesses that were just getting their feet on the ground. And now you have these incredible sweet makers who have factories out in, like 2 or 3 different factories out in Shepparton and Geelong, and they're supplying all over Australia and New Zealand, but they're the back-end suppliers sort of to your big supermarkets. So it sort of shows that the Indian communities, I guess, demand for products that are their products and I guess tailored to them has grown, and it shows how much they've grown as a consumer group as well.
Yeah.
So it is liquid gold because there's this one person sitting there making, I think, 100 tons of sweet in the month of Diwali.
Wow.
where they want those traditional Indian sweets tailored to them, and it's incredible. And an interesting thing that he said was, he has family who come and visit him from India.
Yeah.
And then when they try his sweets here, they're like, what are you doing? What are you putting in here?
Yeah, right.
That has turned what we have as, like this particular kulfi or kalakanda. What's the secret of your sauce? And he's like, it's Australian milk, it's Australian butter, it's Australian ingredients. And so now we have this small, I guess Australia's a really small country in the grander scale of diasporas compared to America and the UK. You just have a small, I guess, diaspora community, Indian Australian community, who are making incredible Indian sweets because of that mashup of Australian produce and this sort of Indian heritage and Indian techniques.
Wow. Do you ever have that moment where you have to pinch yourself and go, I'm a TV personality? Like, it's pretty amazing.
Yes, but can I just tell you how humbling it is to have children or your family or your friends
Or you
who are
back
like,
down to earth.
oh, Mum, you think you're, famous on TV. Here you go. Here's my dirty laundry for the day, and
You're still a human.
I've got gymnastics at 6, Mum.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
get on with it. Like,
All
it's very, very humble life.
And I know you're doing some amazing work with the Australian government too to promote our liquid gold, which is our Australian produce in overseas markets. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I really, this is where I pinch myself. I think it's moments like this, more than being on television, it's moments like this and spaces like this that I really find it incredible that I didn't even know that this was a job, I guess, or this is something I could do, where I've worked with DFAT, which is the federal government, but the state governments like Victoria and Western Australia, and we take produce out into markets where we're promoting Australian produce. So this really, and at the very back end of it, we're supporting seafood, like Victorian seafood, and then farmers. And I'll tell you the end result of the job is putting on these incredible gala dinners at some of the most incredible spaces, and I've done that for a few years out in India. So I've been at the Taj Mahal Palace in Mumbai, or at the JW Marriott in Bengaluru, which is just this gorgeous property, and just all these.
You're making me jealous.
Yeah, it's just sort of like all these like bucket list moments, and I'm putting on these gala dinners showcasing sort of the Southern Rock lobster or truffles from WA, like Stone Barn truffles, and even simple things like our oranges and all the, I guess, like the compound products that come from them, like our olive oils and truffle oils and all these other things that we want to promote in these markets. And that I find really amazing, because here I am as a South Asian Australian who's come back to work with our governments to take back Australian produce with the skill set that I have, which is creating fine dining dishes and these sort of dishes pulling from my heritage and the food that I ate growing up in my home. So I feel so proud, and that's where I feel extremely sort of humbled and lucky, and just feel like, how did this come full circle? I couldn't be doing something in a space that I love any more than this.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well done to you. So last question for me is, why is it so important to introduce different cuisines into, different sectors? So, for example, hospitality. I think gone are the days of just having an Australian menu. give us your 2 cents on what you think about that.
Yeah, I think when we talk about Australian menus and Australian food, we sort of it's all about this layered tapestry that builds Australia's story. When we look back at, I guess, what is from this land, we're a bit of a curious continent. We're one of the only continents in the world that doesn't really mass produce the produce that was grown on this land. So we're growing like asparagus and lettuce and things that were brought over from other continents. And so I guess the idea of what is Australia's story and who tells Australia's story then becomes very important. You know, looking at native Australian ingredients, what was before us, but then what comes next. And I think Australia is that space, which is why it's so exciting, which is why the world watches MasterChef Australia, is because it is that melting pot and that culinary kitchen of writing Australia's food identity, and we do it one dish at a time.
Yeah, and I love all the mashups that are coming as well, where, you know, you can really get modern takes on traditional food. Yeah. And really speaks to this nostalgic trend as well that we're seeing coming through. So tell me, what's coming up for you?
I guess a few exciting things. The best part of my job is I get to do a bunch of really say yes to a bunch of really exciting things that all go on at the same time. I'm really excited about a show that I'm about to film overseas. It looks at my work with the UN World Food Project and sheds a light on a lot of female sort of growers in the food logistics and that space. Really, I can't wait to get out there and go to these rural areas and tell these stories of these female farmers. So that's one thing. And then my book is coming out next year. I just sort of sat down over Christmas and wrote this manuscript and truly opened myself up and just poured everything that I know and my mother and her, you know, my father and everyone who came before me. I just poured it into this book, and I think that's a really emotional piece that's coming out next year. I'm nervous and I'm excited, and I can't wait to get that out there. The cooking school where there'll be more children and parents and the wider community coming in to have cooking lessons. Amongst a few of the things that I'm working on, and I just think I get to say yes to really cool spaces and cool projects, and I just love what I'm doing.
It sounds so exciting. So if any of the listeners want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
I'm on social media, so Instagram is where I guess I love to be on most out of all the other social handles. So I think if you look up Kishwar Chowdhury, I'm probably one of the
only ones.
It's a bit of an uncommon name, so you can type in my name and find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on Bite Size today. It's been an absolute pleasure hearing about your journey and your passion for Bengali cuisine and how you're using food to connect cultures and communities.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this was such a great chat.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's Bite Size episode. We hope you got some industry insights and tips for your business. Subscribe to our podcast and tune in to our next episode. Feel free to reach out to me for any comments and questions via LinkedIn.